If you were worried about Forte coming back strong, I think we got our answer. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. This is Trust the Profits Top 25 reset that we've been doing after all the major Derby preps here. Matthew DeSantis joins me tonight. We're going to cover the top 25. Matthew, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well, and I think we finally, we've been saying it for weeks. Oh, the next week's going to give us clarity. The next week's going to give us clarity. I think we finally are getting some clarity on the Derby picture after several really big Derby prep races this weekend in New York, in Florida, in California, as well as a little one in Kentucky also.
Yeah, and since last week too, because we recorded last week before the Cave Rock news in Faustin, so that there's a couple of big changes there in the top 25. Obviously, we had a couple I wouldn't call them big surprises, but some horses moving up the ladder, and we have 5 new horses joining the top 25. But Matt, if you could pull up the top or the actual point standings here for the Kentucky Derby points earned, Forte on top, obviously with 2 big wins. Underneath, Practical Move, I mean, what do we say? Anything above probably even 40 is going to probably get enough to lock you in this year. I mean, it could, who knows, but
yeah, I would say those top 6 have to feel pretty good about sitting in the starting gate at the Kentucky Derby. I think Rocket Can, Raise Cane, if Raise Cane wants to go, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Angel Empire, Confidence Game, Practical Move, Forte, I think are all locks for the starting gate. Then you look at some of those horses, Red Route 1, Instant Coffee, Sun Thunder, General Banker, that next group, 2 fills right there as well. It's interesting. I think, 2 fills, we talk about how he's consistent, might continue to rack up some more points. Instant Coffee, certainly one of the favorites, I think. Red Route 1, another pretty consistent horse finishing in the top 2 both times. I think the question marks here, if you were to look at which of these horses currently in the top 10 or 11 is not going to make the starting gate, I think you'd have to point to maybe Raise Cane if the connections decides not to go, or a horse like Sun Thunder or General Banker. And we'll talk a little bit more about them in a bit.
Yeah, so let's jump into our top 25, which is, of course, the consensus of our partners here. We have, like I said, 5 new horses coming in, and you can see those 5 on the left side. The numbers are pinked out instead of bright red. They're more of a dull pink. Number 25, new in this week, Slip Mahoney. Had a pretty good showing over the weekend, the Brad Cox horse by Arrogate. Where are you at on Slip Mahoney? Does he deserve it to be in here? Is he going to make a run for the Derby or what?
I think he, last week, Jace's Road was in 25th place. I feel like this 25th place might be just a little bit of a rotating chair, but I think Slip Mahoney's a legitimate horse. I mean, he won the Gotham, he won the Jerome, came back, finished second in the Gotham. That was a bizarre race, and we'll talk a little bit more of that when we talk about the winner. But Slip Mahoney's a pretty consistent horse, and here's what I liked about it. Now, granted, it was a 1-turn mile, so maybe you don't want to take much out of this race, but he showed a new dimension, which was coming from really far back, coming from well out of it and closing. He had traditionally been a horse that sat pretty close to the lead or wired fields. So I do like horses that show that versatility and maturation. So I think he's worthy of being in the bottom of our list for sure.
Yeah, I didn't hear his name the first half of the race and assumed he was out of the picture, and then he came roaring in. So yeah, I think, like you said, showed some versatility. We'll see if he improves any from here. 24, another newcomer, Arthur's Ride by Tappet out of the William Mott barn, who's been getting a lot of run lately. Where are you at on Arthur's Ride, and what's next?
That's the big question is what's next for him. Is it going to be the Tampa Bay Derby? Is it going to be the Florida Derby? Is it going to be one of these other preps potentially? Here's the thing, though. Arthur's Ride, 3 career races, just broke his maiden at Gulfstream Park over the winter. Had about a 5-month layoff before breaking his maiden. Here's who he lost to the first 2 times out, where he finished second. One of those losses was to Instant Coffee. The other loss was to a Steve Asmussen horse, Disarm, who's very, very good as well. So, I mean, he's kept excellent company and broke his maiden in impressive fashion finally. It's going to be a big step up, but it's not unreasonable in this crop to expect a horse like Arthur's Ride to really pop in a big race.
At 23, another newcomer, Linda Rice horse, Arctic Arrogance, who's been on our radar all along this year, sitting just outside the top 25 most of the year, but now has moved in since we've had a couple others drop out. Wood Memorial, is that factual, or are we not sure yet on Arctic Arrogance?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to stay up in that New York circuit with Linda. And here's the thing is he's a horse that's already accumulated some Kentucky Derby points, and he's going to continue to accumulate them because he's a horse that just kind of finishes underneath. He finished second to Hit Show last time out. And so and by the way, that was facing incredible pace pressure that day and still finished, I thought, a pretty strong second. So this is a good horse. And that New York circuit is not the strongest. And so I could absolutely see Arctic Arrogance finishing in the exacta at the Wood Memorial.
All right, up to 22. Eyeing Clover up a couple spots. Last week he was in 24th again due to a couple of the horses last week dropping out or whatever reason. But Eyeing Clover is headed where next? Do we know?
Probably the Wood as well. I mean, he ran in the Gotham this past weekend and finished fourth in that race. Here's the thing, though. He was right on that really blistering pace they were setting early in that race. He is the only horse who stayed up and showed any sort of ability to sustain that pace late. Everyone else just kind of collapsed well behind. And so for him to stay up for fourth, and it was a photo, by the way, with General Banker. And so for him to, I think, stay up in only his really second or third career race, I think is saying something about the horse. I think you give him 2 turns. I wouldn't be surprised if there's progression there for Brad Cox.
All right, 21 National Treasure, who scratched out over the weekend. Slight issue. Hopefully nothing that's going to, plague him for any significant time. But is National Treasure still on the radar here? Is he going to try to run here in the next week or two?
I would be stunned. I think he's a horse. I would not be surprised if in the next week we hear the official word that he's off the Derby trail. Because he is, you have a tender left hindquarter. I mean, that's not a good sign for these young horses. They're going to put him to the bench, I think, for a while. I would be stunned if we see National Treasure run again in any race before the Kentucky Derby.
All right, let's move up to the top 20 here. I believe we have a couple more newcomers. Yes, Skinner, who also ran over the weekend, had a pretty nice race at 20. The Curlin-sired John Sheriffs. What do we know on Skinner? He looked pretty good.
He did. He came from the back of the pack, which is kind of what he does as a Curlin horse. He's going to like all the distance. Ran a 94 Beyer speed figure. Nice horse for John Sheriffs. And I think he might be a little pace dependent, maybe a little bit of like a Red Route 1 vibes in terms of being a little bit of a deep closer, needing him to go fast up front. But he's got ability, and I think he's maybe a little bit more he's a little less one note than Red Route 1 is. And so, I think the only question there is, does he get to show his best out in California? And, there's some other good horses that he's going to be competing with out there to get points. It's just a matter of whether he can get enough points to get in the starting gate at this rate.
Number 19, Raise Kane coming off the victory. Ben Colebrook making his debut on the Trust the Profits top 25 trainers. Congrats to him. This horse looked good. I mean, off the grid a little bit as far as, being on anybody's radar. And then, of course, like you said, that race was not your typical horse race.
Right.
A little strange to watch. Of course,
very strange to watch.
We've seen it before. It's happened before many times, but it always is a little bit breathtaking to watch because you want to, you don't want to see anything bad happen out there. And that looked pretty scary for a minute there, but all ended well as far as I know.
Yeah, and what you're alluding to is the riderless horse. How great is Nate? Loses JD Acosta right at the starting gate. And then here's the part that we don't usually see. So when you see a riderless horse, usually they're staying on the outside. How great is Nate? Amazingly, circled the field and then dove into the inside rail and took the inside path he was trained to some extent.
That was the scary part.
That is the very scary part. And so, and not surprisingly, then Raise Kane comes flying like heck down the middle of the track where he doesn't need to worry about the riderless horse at all. I do wonder how much that played into it, but the early pace also set up for those closers because we saw Slip Mahoney and a few other horses closing from deep as well. So Raise Kane, here's the thing though. So Turfway Park horse who had been running on synthetic gets a muddy surface in New York. Not surprising that synthetic horses like a dirt track with moisture. Also, it's still a one-turn race. How much we can really extrapolate from that? I'm not sure.
All right. Verifying at 18, up a few spots to attrition, I'm sure. But we need to see Verifying again to prove or disprove that his last race out was maybe a misstep that was, something that he can work from and improve and show what I think some of us think he has, but Yeah, that's where we're at with verifying. Anything new
Agreed.
from your side?
Nothing new. Just I think he's too talented not to continue to give another shot, and we'll be excited to see where he goes next.
Number 17, Tappett's Conquest by Tappett, another Cox horse,
Mm-hmm.
headed to the Louisiana Derby, which is starting to form up to be a nice looking field. But
Yeah.
where are we at with Tappett's Conquest? Any news other than that?
Yeah, he's on the work tab, obviously, for Brad Cox. And I think, the question here is maybe a similar one to verifying. Finished fourth last time out in the Risen Star, did Tappett's Conquest, but very talented, was coming running late. This is still a young horse that doesn't have a lot of reps under his belt. And so I think another progression at the Louisiana Derby would not be unexpected. But you're right, that race is really shaping up to be a banger.
16, Sun Thunder. He's been on the list a few weeks now. Into Mischief, Kenny McPeak, our favorite. Also looking at the Louisiana Derby. Any news out of that barn with Sun Thunder?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, working out regularly. I do think the question is with Sun Thunder, obviously a big price, finishing second at the Risen Star. Can he back that up? You could look at this and go, listen, his one bad performance was on the slop in the Southwest. And maybe if this horse just gets a dry, fast track, he's much better than we gave him credit for. So, we'll have to see. But I do think, like I said, out of some of these horses that are getting a little higher up on our list, he's one of those horses that I kind of need to prove it to me with another strong effort.
All right, let's go top 15. At 15, we have Litigate, who's coming off of a nice race last weekend. Todd Pletcher barn, another Louisiana Derby candidate here.
Mm-hmm.
We have do we think Litigate's going to be have a chance at the Louisiana Derby, as this field we just mentioned again looks pretty tough?
Yeah, I think he's got no shot. I
tend to agree.
I didn't like that Sam F. Davis. He won, but all of his best competition had trouble in that race, and that was a track that he took advantage of in terms of how speed favoring it was that day. I think you put him in the deep water with what's going to be a really good Louisiana Derby field. I don't like him in that race at all. So I'm kind of pretty out on him.
All right, 14, Go Rocket Ride looked great to me. Moving up 9 spots on the list this week. Richard Mandela barn. I think that horse was the most impressive non-winner of the weekend to me. Maybe. It looked solid.
Yeah, and
or close solid to it. There was a couple non-winners that looked good. So
but
Go Rocket Ride is legit.
He is very legit. And here's what made it, I think, the more impressive. To your point, second career start. I mean, to look that mature, that gutsy in a second career effort. Hijazi swings wide going around that far turn at Santa Anita, and he dives back into the inside to avoid it, and just showed, again, a lot of maturity, things that you would expect out of a horse after a 5th, 6th, 7th race. Second race, here's the other kicker. This horse went from a 92 buyers in debut to a 96 buyers in the San Felipe. There's progression there. So that 92 is not a fluke first time out. This is a really good horse that has some versatility and can rate.
Look out next time out for Go Rocket Ride. Number 13, Kings Barnes, also up a handful of spots. Coming in to the Louisiana Derby as well. This horse is one that's got a shot here at the Louisiana Derby for me.
I think so. He's the much better of the two Pletchers that were down in Tampa, because Kings Barn raced in Tampa the day after Litigate won the Sam F. Davis. I think Kings Barn is immensely talented, and I just think very special horse, and definitely is a major win contender in that Louisiana Derby. I think a pretty good one for Todd Pletcher.
12, Reincarnate out of the Yak Teen barn. Good Magic. What's next for Reincarnate? Are we sure? Is there a plan that's locked in yet?
There's not a plan. I mean, the plan is Santa Anita or Arkansas Derby. That's what we keep hearing over and over again. Based upon the fact he ran, obviously, in the Risen Star, you would expect him to perhaps run to the Arkansas Derby. But here's the thing. You talked about how a lot of horses just dropped off with attrition this past weekend out in California in particular. Suddenly that Santa Anita Derby seems a little bit wide open than it was a week ago, because there's no Cave Rock, there's no Faustin, there's probably no National Treasure, there's likely no Hijazi, who dropped off our list entirely. Like, suddenly, Yak Teen can kind of have his cake and eat it too a little bit, and have these horses, running against each other and still hit the exacta. So I think just have to wait and see. But Reincarnate, horse that faced a ton of trouble in that Risen Star or Rebel, I should say, and still really ran well.
Yeah, that's a horse that I think a lot of us are looking forward to seeing
Yeah.
come back here. And the landscape of the California side of things really took a turn in the last 7 days. So
Don't you know it?
no, number 11, Angel of Empire, another winner from last weekend out of the Cox Barn. Down 3 spots up 3 spots this week. Are we getting a little faith in this, or is this another piece of attrition that he's moving up a few spots due to others dropping out?
Yeah, I think probably a little bit more of just moving up because others are dropping out at this point. I do think he's a very good horse, but and of course, shout out Pennsylvania bred. So always love to see that. I think Cox is leaving his windows wide open for where he wants to go with Angel of Empire next. Could be the Bluegrass, could be the Arkansas, could be the Louisiana Derby. So I think that maybe tells you he's kind of waiting to see maybe where some other horses of his want to end up slotting and then kind of moving Angel of Empire appropriately. But certainly an intriguing horse, but I think kind of a little bit like Sun Thunder. Want to see another effort.
Exactly. Let's move to the top 10 here. Two Phils has been in the top 10 for 3 or 4 weeks now. Just one of those grinding, consistent horses. Heading to Keeneland next out of the Larry Ravelli barn.
Yep.
What do you think on Two Phils?
I was really intrigued by the fact that he's likely headed to the Bluegrass next, because you mentioned how the Louisiana Derby is shaping up, and that's the circuit that he had been running on down at the fairgrounds. I think Larry Ravelli kind of looked around and said, listen, if everybody's going to go to the Louisiana Derby, I'm going to shoot up and go to Keeneland instead.
Let's get our points.
Forget this and kind of get some points there, which might end up being a little bit of an easier race. So, I think that's a pretty strategic move. But Two Phils, a horse we all like here, I think, at Trust the Profits. Honest horse, just runs hard every time. May not win, but is going to give you some value in the top 3, I think, for sure.
Number 9, Rocket Can, up a spot, finished second to what might be the world beater this year. So we'll get to that in a minute. But Rocket Can looked solid again. Can't ask much more. If Forte is what we think he is and is a freak and he's looking, like he is, obviously.
Yeah.
Rocket Can look pretty damn solid compared to everybody else that's not named Forte. I would venture to guess. I mean,
yeah, I think so. And the important thing to point out is his buyer speed figure came back at a 93, which is 11 points higher than what it had been in the Holy Bull. A lot of people criticized how slow that Holy Bull was. He was wide the whole way. Well, guess what? He was wide again the whole way in the Fountain of Youth, but he still registered at 93. I always made the point that Holy Bull was coming off the bench for Rocket Can. You always expect a horse to improve second off the bench, and that's exactly what he did. He proved that maybe he's a slight cut below the very top echelon of this crop, but he is a very legitimate horse who can run very well and has locked his position into the Kentucky Derby starting gate.
Yeah, he's the type of horse that could get underneath for like a top 4 or 5 finish.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
Red Route 1 is number 8. Been in the top 10 a few weeks, at least 2 or 3 weeks again. The gun runner, Steve Asmussen horse. Where are we at? He's heading to the Louisiana Derby, which we know of at least 5 of these top 25 that are going to be there. That's going to be a banger, as you say.
Yeah.
What's new with him?
Well, not a lot's new with him. He's back on the work tab for Steve Asmussen. And I will say is he's pace dependent. I mean, he just, until we see otherwise, he's kind of pace dependent. And the other kicker is maybe he's track dependent. He likes a wet track, and I kind of want to see him do it in dry, fast conditions. Can he still close that way? And he needs to give himself less to do. I mean, he was 19 and a half lengths back at first call last time out. Like, you can't keep doing this to yourself. And everybody gets, oh my God, he closes like a freight train. Yes, he does, but you can't be 19 and you're not Zenyatta and you're not Mind That Bird. So, you gotta get a little bit closer.
Find the medium. Find the medium.
Exactly. Yeah, just be 10 lengths back. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Number 7, Hit Show up there in the New York circuit there with Brad Cox. Headed to the Wood Memorial. I mean, this horse this is one of those horses has done nothing wrong.
Yep.
Probably like Rocket Can, just outside that top tier echelon. In my opinion, I'm not sure. Maybe he proves me wrong on that, but I just think he's another one that will make the gate, will run honest, as you put it.
Yeah.
And I just don't think he's top echelon, but he is definitely good enough to make some noise in there.
Yeah, and he's in the right circuit. He's in that New York circuit that I mentioned is kind of soft. We know he's a 2-turn horse, and some of those horses coming out of the Gotham, if they try to run in the wood, are not necessarily 2-turn horses. Hit Show, I think, has some versatility and is in the right circuit to just rack up Kentucky Derby points. And even though he just has a few by winning the Withers, I think he's got a few more in store for him at the Wood Memorial and has to be considered the favorite at this point.
At number 6 is the biggest mover forward in the list. Practical Move up from 20 to number 6. After a nice victory this weekend out of the Yak Teen Barn, Santa Anita Derby looks to be next, correct? So what did you think of Practical Move? I thought it was a good run.
I thought it was a good run, and I'll be honest, he's even higher on my list. So he is, I believe, number 3 on my list. I think he is. I think he's the goods. I think he is genuinely the goods. He was, and what impressed me was he ran to his workouts. He had been working out like a demon out there in Santa Anita. We've talked about it on multiple episodes. He's firing off 59 and 1s, 59 and 2s, and minute flat bullet works. And coming off that Los Alamitos, which we both talked about. Well, you never know how that Los Alamitos form is going to hold up. Right. And, we'll see. Sits a perfect trip and then just puts away the field. And I mean, records 100 buyer speed figure. And which honestly, outside of horses in Bob Baffert's barn, has not been done very often in this 3-year-old trail. So I think very, very impressed by Practical Move. Like his running style a lot, and think he's a real genuine contender.
All right, let's go to the top 5, which I believe there wasn't a whole lot of changing going on here.
No change. Yeah.
Straightforward, the same top 5. We must not have been so overly impressed with any of the winners this past weekend, but there is one, and we'll get to that in a second here. But number 5, Tappet Trice by Tappet, headed to the Tampa Bay Derby this weekend. I believe the only horse in the top 25 here that is running in this race. And I think this horse is one that if he can take a small step forward, could be put into that. I mean, he's already top 5 considered here, but could be even more of a banger than we are giving him credit for at 5. So we'll see. There's a lot to learn here.
I think so. And, it's important. He's only ever run it against Allowance Company. That's the thing to point out. He's never run a stakes race. So
never been pressed super hard.
Never been pressed. There's a lot of questions with him. The talent is obvious. And I should say there was a very interesting quote. This weekend is the Aziri Stakes at Oak Lawn Park with Secret Oath. Louis Saez has been Secret Oath's jockey for the last several races. Louis Saez told D. Wayne Lucas that he will not be riding Secret Oath because he is so confident in Tappet Trice, and he believes there is so much potential with Tappet Trice that he thinks this is his Derby horse and potentially his Derby winner. And that was, I think, very, very telling that Louis would pass up riding Secret Oath to stay down at Tampa to ride Tappet Trice.
Yeah, but I'm a big fan. I probably got him right 1A and 1B with Forte. Obviously, Arabian Nights a serious contender too. Number 4, Confidence Game. What's up? Where's he headed next? Do we have any idea? Because I'm really interested to see what he does next.
We don't. I mean, I would imagine Keith's going to keep him in that with how stacked the Louisiana Derby is staking up. I would imagine that he's going to stay at Arkansas and run the Arkansas Derby. Maybe head up the Bluegrass, just play it by ear to see kind of maybe which field is going to stack up saltier. But a very impressive race last time out. Showed a new dimension. We talked about a few other horses, but being able to sit and then go is such a valuable skill to have. And just showed the maturity to be able to do that. James Graham, I thought, did a great job. So excited for Confidence Game. I think he's I think out of all the long shots who kind of won, Angel Empire, another long shot who won a couple weeks ago, a horse like Ray's Cane, out of all the long shots who won, I think Confidence Game is the one who probably makes the most sense as a legit contender moving forward.
And now for the 3 that I think are the real standouts that have proven that they're standouts, not just based on speculation on what they could be, but actually have done it. Number 3, Instant Coffee by Bolt Doro. Louisiana Derby bound again. So many of them.
Yeah. And Instant Coffee is maybe the most flattered horse in this entire crop. That literally everyone he beats comes back to win stakes races. So, I mean, by not running at all, your opinion of him continues to rise because you see the horses that he beat come back and win.
Yeah, I'll be honest. The few days after he ran and won and looked great, I was not as nearly as high on him as I am now, and he hasn't run since. It's just like you said, it's how the other ones have come back.
Yep.
His competition that he made look pretty bad there have now looked pretty good. So that just shows you how much,
I mean,
how good he really could be.
Yeah, he beat Confidence Game by 9.5 lengths in the
Right.
Lecomte, and the Confidence Game comes back to win the Rebel. I mean, so those are the things. And now Instant Coffee, unlike the top two, doesn't have dazzling speed. He's a grinder. He's just going to keep coming, and he's going to get there eventually. The concern is that maybe he's a little bit like Red Route 1, and sometimes he gives himself a little too much to do. So it'll be interesting to see how Brad Cox continues to train him, how forwardly placed he might be, or at least try to sit him mid-pack sometimes so he doesn't have quite as much to do coming for home.
Number 2, Arabian Night, who we agreed all the way up until this past weekend, perhaps the best best performance of 2023 out of this crop was Arabian Night. And I guess we might as well throw in number 1, Forte, who just had a awesome awesome comeback race this weekend too. Yeah. Now with the Forte big win, have we seen Arabian Nights 2023 top performance of the year so far? Did Forte eclipse that, or are we?
I think you could make an argument that Forte and Practical Move eclipsed it in that it was they came back with higher speed figures, I believe, and they did it against probably better competition. And it's important to remember that was also on an off track that day in the Southwest. So, again, want to see this on a dry, fast track. Arabian Nights, very good horse, but is a very good horse who has raced a grand total of 2 times in his career. You talk about, horses that have yet to face adversity. He hasn't really done, he's not going to run in any of these kind of middle prep races. He raced in an early prep race in the Southwest. He didn't come back in the Rebel at all. Now it's, where's he going to go next? It's going to be Santa Anita or Arkansas. And it's just a matter of where Tim Yaktine wants to put his fleet of horses that he has now. And I think Yaktine probably only has 3 really serious contenders in terms of Practical Move, Arabian Night, and Reincarnate. And so where he wants to place those 3 is going to be interesting.
And Forte, the man of the hour this weekend, and the, I don't think there was anybody that was, a lot of people were fading him because he was coming off a layoff.
Mm-hmm.
He's your Breeders' Cup champ. And a lot of people didn't know what to make of what was going to happen Saturday. I never really lost the faith in him personally. I was definitely not going to fade him. But I was more impressed than I thought I was going to be. I didn't know what to expect. I certainly didn't expect him to come out and pretty much make everybody look bad.
Yeah, he won it easy. I mean, he won it easy. Now, you could say Blazing Sevens didn't fire at all. And General Jim, who was the 3rd choice in the morning line, scratched because of a illness. Yeah. And so you could say, well, it's basically Forte and then the 4th morning line choice and better from there. But still, he looked so good. I mean, he looked healthy. He looked ready to go. And that running style was perfect. And Irad knew how much he had underneath him, too. Irad just swung him out 4 wide, didn't really even care at the end, and was just like, go. And then still managed to wind him down at the end. And no doubt about it. And so, we'll obviously see Florida Derby will be an even bigger test for him coming up there. Todd Pletcher said to the NBC commentators that if Forte handled the track at Gulfstream Park well, he would stay down in Florida for the Florida Derby. I know you and I are both very excited about that because we're going to see him down there in person. Absolutely. Rather than him going up to the Bluegrass. So, but he answered all the questions coming off the 4-month layoff, and I think is without a doubt our number 1 choice. And I think that was one that was unanimous across the board for all 4 of us voting in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we close it out, anything to discuss? I mean, I feel like we know about half of the field at this point now, which is a lot better than I would have said even a few days ago. I feel like about at least a third of the field is pretty established now for who's going to make it and who isn't. But yeah, there's still a lot of spots open, a lot of shaking and moving to go.
There are, for sure. Well, I think just tell people, obviously, the Tampa Bay Derby this week is the only prep race. Make sure to pay attention to that. Tapit Trice is going to be a big name there. The other thing is just continue to pay attention to that New York circuit. I have a feeling that's where the curveballs are going to come out of because that's a soft circuit, and I could see a lot of upsets happening there. So I think that's where you're going to see some long shots coming up.
All right, Matthew, thanks for joining again. tune in next week. We'll probably reset this thing after the Tampa Bay Derby and see what Tappet Trice did or anybody else who might have pulled an upset or, a surprise effort. But thanks for joining. Peace out.